I.C.E. Inner core exercise.
We're going to take it to the next level. We're going to have so much fun with this video.
I.C.E. Trusted therapist, inventor and researcher, biomechanical expert, and trainer to the country's most elite athletes, Ashley Black.
10 years in the making, I.C.E. Foundations.
I.C.E.
These moves are so creative, and they're really going to challenge even the most expert exerciser.
I.C.E. Inner core exercise.
Hi, I'm Ashley Black, and I'm so excited to bring you 10 years in the making I.C.E. Foundations. And I feel very fortunate to have my great friend, longtime client, 10-year plus veteran of the NFL, Marcus Coleman. Marcus, can you come on out? Hey!
How you doing?
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having
me.
me.
Can you just tell everybody how I.C.E. has impacted your play?
Well, I honestly can't imagine being without it. It's helped me learn how to use my body. It's helped the overall completeness to my game. Biomechanically, you know, I'm more stable when I run, when I cut, so it's been a great asset to me.
Awesome. Well, you guys, if you're ready to change your body, change your spine, learn how to function, and learn how to look like this, then get ready because we're about to get started with I.C.E. Foundations.
I.C.E. Lie down hamstring tendon series.
Now that you've learned how to access the deep core, you're going to translate those movements that we just did to every single one of these exercises, even though we are moving on to the legs. What you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and use your ball, and you're going to push it up against the wall. That way you don't have to worry about it rolling around too much, okay? Then you're going to place your feet in what we call parallel. This is a position that you better get used to because you're going to use it a lot. And what it means is that you're lining up your ankle, your knees, your hips, and your shoulders. So you're basically lining up like train tracks in parallel. Then what you're going to do is you're going to keep this part of your body down. You should feel your ribs stay on the floor. And then go ahead, Marcus, take a deep breath in. And exhale, tighten the transverse abs, and then you're going to do a posterior pelvic tilt, which means you're going to spill the water out to the back, and you're going to raise up. Stop right there. What do you feel?
I feel glute and high hamstring.
Glute and high hamstring, which is basically like that little crease right at the bottom of your cheek, okay? And then you're going to roll back down. Now that was our first isometric hold. Now he's going to do some slow and fast. Now it's very important that you don't lift this part of your body up because then you're going to be using your back, okay? We're not trying to work back right now. We're trying to work right here at the base of the bones, okay? Make sure you keep your legs directly in parallel. You're going to do some slow, and if you feel comfortable, then I want you to go ahead and pump them and do them fast. Now, do you feel that?
Yes.
Good, and stop. Now, we're going to go ahead and move on to the second position, which is external rotation. What you're going to do is just let your knees fall out to the side, and you're going to turn your feet out. And when you do that, you actually take the emphasis or the work and move it a little bit more out to the sides. We call that moving out laterally, okay? So it's the same exercise. Let's do one isometric. Deep breath in. Exhale, tighten that transverse abs. Go ahead and roll the spine up. Now where do you feel it?
Outer hamstring and still glute.
Exactly. That external rotation should put the emphasis right here. You're keeping your core tight, so make sure before you continue that you actually feel that in the deep abs and kind of on the outsides of your bones, okay? And go ahead and down and up. The movement is real simple. You're just tipping the pelvis and rolling it up. So you're using the same muscles in the core that you used in that very first pelvic tilt that we did. And then as you lift, squeeze your buns together and really try to activate that lateral hamstring and your buns. Very good. And then go ahead and turn it to internal rotation. So did you see what Marcus did here? He put his knees together, he turned his feet together, and the internal rotation comes from the hips, okay? So don't crank your toes pigeon, you're just letting the feet come along with what the hips have already done, okay? So again, we're gonna do one isometric. Make sure you feel it right where I'm telling you to. Ladies, if you hate that very top part of your inner thigh, this is the one. For athletes, y'all need it too, but keep this down, deep breath in. Exhale, send the energy down into the transverse abs. Go ahead and roll up. You're spilling the water out backwards. Squeeze your knees together. Now where do you feel it?
The inner hamstring and inner glute, actually.
Inner hamstring and inner glute. Okay, so everything moved to the inside. And we're just gonna do a few repetitions slow, and if you feel comfortable, do a few repetitions quick. And ladies, if you can, actually squeeze your knees together and you'll start to get a little bit of those inner thighs and inner hamstrings. And everybody stop and rest.
ICE, lie down long hamstring series.
This next exercise is just like the one that you just did, except for we're gonna do it with straight legs. And what that's gonna do is actually gonna shift the emphasis down into more of the hamstring, okay? So you should feel this from the hip joint all the way down into the knee joint. So get used to parallel external and internal, because here we go. We're gonna line up, again, just like railroad tracks. You wanna line up your ankles, knees, hips, and shoulders. You're gonna go ahead and take a breath in. You're gonna exhale, tighten your transverse abs, flatten your back out so you're taking yourself into a posterior pelvic tilt or tipping the water out backwards, and then you're gonna lift your buns up, only an inch or two off the floor. Hold that. Now really drive your legs down into the ball. Do you feel that, Marcus?
Yes.
Where?
I feel in I guess my medial or my middle hamstring.
Yeah, the middle hamstring. Okay, so when you're in parallel, that's what you should feel. That's the big one. That's the biceps femoris. That's the big meaty one. Okay, so make sure as you're holding that you feel your abs. Squeeze your buns together, and I want you to feel those hamstrings. Good. Go ahead, and we'll just do a few slow and a few fast, and I'll point some things out. One thing you definitely don't want to do is don't come up in an arch, okay? Because that will actually compress the spine. If you can see what Marcus is doing, he's tipping his pelvis to the back and then rolling up. It's actually called spinal articulation, which means you're rolling the spine one vertebrae at a time up. And then he's going to pump them fast. Make sure as you do that you feel those hammies. Fire those hamstrings. Hamstrings run up the back of the legs. Good. Go ahead and take it down. And I want you to go ahead and roll out. Remember, external rotation comes from the hips, okay? Don't crank your feet out. That doesn't do anything. You want to rotate out at the hips, and then the feet just come along with it, okay? So deep breath in. Exhale, send the energy down. Tighten the transverse abs. Roll the pelvis, and lift up. Now that should have shifted it out to the side, yes? Good. And he's going to do a few slow and a few fast. Again, you're going to work at your own pace. Do not speed this up if you don't feel it in the right place. You just need to go up and hold it until you can send the energy down. Very good, and we're gonna go ahead and take it into internal rotation at the hips. You may wanna take your feet a little bit wider than your own frame and then just roll everything in. And if you're doing it right, your toes will tap together. So deep breath in, exhale, transverse abs, pelvic tilt, lift, squeeze those inner hamstrings. These are the two little teeny ones, and they're so important, particularly for you athletes when you're running at all these different angles. Good, we're going up and down. Remember not to let any of the stress or tension come up into your neck. You want to look like you are from your chest up in a coma. Are you awake?
Barely.
And lift, and we're going to do a few fast. Hold that last one. Where are you feeling that?
Inner hamstring and glutes.
Inner hamstrings and glutes. You pinching your booty cheeks together? Then you're doing it right. All right, everybody go ahead and drop and rest.
ICE, lie down adductor series.
One of the get on a pedestals for me is how undertrained the adductors or the inner thighs are. There's very few pieces of equipment that really get at the short and long adductors, okay? So we're gonna try to begin to fire those guys up and start to strengthen the whole leg. One huge thing on the setup, remember I told you I was gonna keep reinforcing that correct spine? You cannot tilt on this exercise or you're actually firing all the wrong muscles. So let's do a check right now. I want you to take your own hands, slide them under your low back, and make sure that you've got a little bit of a 2-finger space, okay? And then I want you to make sure that your ribs have contact with the mat, okay? So that way, when you're in a laying down position, you're making sure that you're still in correct spine, okay? Does everybody feel that? Did you feel that? Okay, so don't squeeze. All I want you to do is take a deep breath in and exhale. Don't change your spine and just draw your transverse abs in and huge pelvic floor contraction, okay? Working the adductors is a great way to get the pelvic floor involved with this whole core stability, okay? So here we go. Make sure you keep that little space. Make sure you relax all through here. In a coma up here, deep breath in. Exhale, all the energy comes down. Tighten that inner core, draw up the pelvic floor, and then squeeze this ball as hard as you can. Squeeze, 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 release. All right, now just do a few more reps. It's always blow, abs, go. Now, if your ball doesn't get that skinny, that's okay. Marcus has very strong adductors, and he's probably gonna pop a hole in the ball here. Most of us are gonna move it just a teeny bit, and that's okay. You just wanna make sure that you feel it all the way up between the inner thighs, and I'm glad you actually did that one wrong. Don't let the pelvis tip. As you squeeze, do it again. You want to almost aim your tailbone down towards the floor, keeping that space in your low back. And then go ahead and do a few fast. Fast with breath. Turn on the fast twitch fibers and release. That's pretty intense. Did you feel that?
Yeah.
I was looking at his face. You could tell he could feel it. And we're going to go ahead and move straight into doing this with straight legs. So what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna take the ball down, straighten out your legs, and pull them up to the sides of the ball. You're gonna have to engage your hip flexors a little bit, or the muscles right here in the hip joint. And then what you're gonna do is hold your knees straight, and we're gonna do the same thing. Remember what I said about the core? Inhale, exhale. What's your low back doing right now, Marcus? And squeeze. He's in class. The correct answer is it has a small space. He didn't raise his hand. What is the teacher doing asking that? Good. Now the thing about doing it with your legs straight and wide is you should feel this one all the way from kind of up in the groin down to the knees. Hold it, Marcus. Do you feel that coming all the way down?
I feel all the way or going all the way down to my knees.
Perfect. Different set of inner thighs. Pump it, here we go. And notice his inner core contracts every time. I can see it from here. Good, and rest.
ICE, single leg pull down series.
This next section I really love because a lot of these exercises have been adopted from a Pilates machine, and so we're just going to kind of copy the loops that they have by using the bands. So we're very lucky we had this built for our set. You probably don't have one of these laying around the house. So what you're going to do is just tie a knot right in the center, and you're going to go ahead and just slam that inside of the door, and it'll hold just fine, okay? All right, we're going to begin with the first one, which is a single leg pull down. For hamstring flexibility as well as hamstring contraction. Getting into the loop, you're gonna wanna bend the knee, that way you're not in such a forced long position of the muscle. It's a little bit more comfortable. I do recommend wearing shoes. I've tried this without shoes and the loop went sailing over my head. So if you've got a shoe, you can put that on and it'll help the band to kind of stick there. All right, so guess what we're gonna do? First things first, spine check. Correct spine, just like we did when we were doing the inner thighs. But it's harder not to roll the pelvis when you're flexing the hip. There's something about that mechanic. People wanna pair that. They wanna try to roll the pelvis. So show it wrong, Marcus. Roll your bottom up. People try to do this, okay? You wanna keep this down. Buns down, small space behind the low back. And you may find that your hamstring length, when you do that, is here, and that's fine, okay? So you're gonna go to the point where you feel a stretch, okay? and don't let the pelvis roll. If you start here and you begin to come up and right here you feel your low back going down and your hamstring stretching, then you're done. That's your range of motion right here, okay? And we're gonna work on that. This is a great contract, relax pattern to gain flexibility. So go ahead and start in a little stretch, Marcus. And you're gonna take a deep breath in, use this leg to stabilize, send the energy down to the core, and then contract. As you're pulling the leg down, you're kind of pinching your buns together, and then you come right back up, and you go half a millimeter further, okay? So each repetition, you're gonna go ahead and try to increase that flexibility, being very aware that in your own brain, you're gonna feel like you're pushing your tailbone down as that leg comes up. It's almost like this. Watch what my hands are doing. See what's going on down here? That's what the core feels like it's doing. Okay, a lot of people have never even moved the head of their femur inside the hip because they've had that weird mechanic for so long. This one is huge for hip stability. And go ahead and show a few fast. And again, at home, you're working at your own pace. I recommend about 4 to 8 slow and about 4 to 8 fast. And then on that very last repetition, Marcus, go ahead and stop and hold it in the hamstring position. Keep your buttons down, aim your tailbone down, reach up and grab this, and we're just gonna let everybody get a little bit of a stretch. So you're gonna pull towards you, and then we're gonna do this with the foot. It's called plantar and dorsiflexion, and it actually helps to stretch that subdural layer of tissue in the back of the hamstring called fascia. Should feel like a little burn. We love to stretch fascia. It feels so good. And we're gonna go ahead and go right into the other leg. You guys at home need an assistant like me to do it for you. All right, again, bend the leg so that you don't put too much tension on the long hammies. Make sure your knots are nice and tight, and we're gonna go right into it. Spine check. And press down. As you're doing it, Marcus, will you describe what you're feeling?
I'm just feeling when I'm here, I'm feeling the stretch in my hamstring and actually a little bit further up because my fascia is a little tight up behind the knee. And as I press down, I'm feeling the hamstring tighten, mostly medial, which is middle, down to the bottom, and then all the way up, back into the stretch again.
And what do you feel in the core?
My core is it's the same as it's been. It's stable. I'm using my breathing technique, blow, abs go, which allows me to keep everything here engaged, and it allows me to isolate my inner core and only use my hamstrings to do the exercise correctly.
Excellent. Let's go ahead and do a few fast twitch. When you do fast twitch, you're going to have to turn on the core a little bit more.
Right.
I even felt it as soon as I touched his abs, they tightened up even more. And what about the stretch? You should be feeling a little bit looser than right when you started.
A little bit looser than before, yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Good, and just go ahead and hold that one up. Grab it. Give yourself that plantar and dorsiflexion. Fancy way of saying wiggle your foot. And you want to feel that little bit of burn up the back of the leg. You may feel a lot behind the knee. That's typically where people feel it. Good, and then you're just going to go ahead and bend the knee and get yourself out and rest.
I.C.E. Double Leg Pull Down Series.
This next exercise, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it with 2 legs, which is actually going to require a little bit more demand on, guess what? The core. So what I want you to do, Marcus, is go ahead and take a breath. And go ahead and just give me a small contraction of the inner core. And what I want you to feel like is that you're driving your tailbone down. Okay, so as the legs are coming up, you should kind of feel your pubic bone going through the legs. Do you feel that sensation? If you feel your bottom coming up off the ground, you're going too far or you're not allowing your hip to flex. Working with new clients, I've seen it a lot that they have not even been in this position in years. You may get some shaking, and that's normal. You're not having a seizure. It's just your brain trying to figure out what to do in the hips. Okay? So what I want you to do is really aim that tailbone down, engage your core, and go ahead and take it into a double leg stretch. And then As you push, you're gonna squeeze your glutes together and press down, and I don't want you to go any lower than about right here, okay? And then go ahead and take that back up. Remember, as you press down, Marcus, tell them what you're doing.
I'm pressing down actually with the middle of my hamstrings, and my core is very stable and it's set in the correct way. You want to make sure that you don't want to, when you're driving your tailbone down into the mat, that you're not coming up like this trying to get your tailbone down into the mat. You want to make sure you keep the middle of your back on the floor and keep your core engaged, which allows you to isolate the tailbone and drive it into the mat, and then you press down the hamstring.
That's a great point that he made. It goes back to the bucket that we did in the correct spine section. You don't want what you do down here to affect what goes on in the upper back. Go ahead and do a few fast. It's much more difficult to do it fast with 2 legs because there's more forces on the spine. Okay, so just be careful with this one. Good, we're gonna take this right into a V. Go ahead and open that up. So you're gonna go to a stretch. What you're gonna do is you're gonna let your legs fall. Now he has an abnormal range, I'm just telling you, not many people can spread this far. So you may be up here and that's fine. And then you're gonna close right back at the point where we went before. Not all the way on the floor, okay? And you're gonna go ahead and do this one in parallel, okay? So you're in a neutral hip, pulling and squeezing. This is gonna activate the hamstrings as well as the long adductors. It's a great way to practice the pelvic floor. Marcus, tell them about the pelvic floor contraction as you squeeze.
The pelvic floor contraction actually happens, excuse me, while I'm squeezing into the lower part of the V. You want to, as you lengthen your adductors out in this position, as I squeeze in, I'm contracting my pelvic floor and I'm squeezing the bottom of my glutes to bring in the full, to get the full effect and maximize the intensity.
And go ahead and do a few fast. He is not just smacking his legs around. He's really squeezing all of his guts, basically, pulling up the pelvic floor and contracting the legs. It's very, very deliberate movement. Good, and then go ahead and hold that stretch and reach up and grab the loops with your hands. Grab the loops with your hands, and then he's gonna deepen the stretch. And if you guys can get to this, then we're putting pads and helmets on you. All right, go ahead and pull into the fetal position and rest.
ICE Squat Series.
In this series, we're gonna be working in a little bit of different orientation. We're gonna have the ball on the wall, and we're gonna be working the largest muscle group in the body, the quadriceps, okay? So what we're gonna do is just our little ICE variation on the squat. I love that this ball only rolls one way, so if you've tried it before with a ball that rolls all the way around and rolled off the wall, don't worry about that because this one only rolls up and down. It's gonna actually help support you a little bit, okay? So what I want you to do is go ahead and line up perfectly parallel from the ankle, knee, hip, shoulder, and go ahead and get in that correct spine posture. Engage the transverse abs, lift the chest, lift the head, and he's gonna go down like he is a carousel horse. Straight down and straight up. If I were to harpoon him right through his head and bring that all the way down to the floor, he would run right on that track, just like a carousel horse, okay? It's very important, do it wrong, Marcus, wrap your butt around there. Do not get below the ball like that, okay? And also do not tuck, do not come out like that, okay? It's very important that you keep the correct spine posture all the way through the range of motion. And just go ahead and do about 2 more. Where you should be feeling this is the middle of the quads and your abdominals. Good. This time go down all the way. We're gonna stop right here like we're sitting in a chair, and we're just gonna pulse like 3 or 4. Really feel that right here coming off the knee, okay? Now, go ahead and come up. You're gonna go out a little bit wider than shoulder width. Turn those feet out via the hips. Go ahead and get that bucket. The water is staying in, and we're gonna go down just like a carousel horse. This time, as you're driving up, you're really gonna put emphasis on what's called the VMO, vastus medialis oblique, medial quad. Very good. Are you feeling it there, Marcus? Use your brain to put emphasis on the certain muscles, okay? So we're gonna go down and hold it, and then just pump it a few times right from there. Abs and medial quad, or VMO. Very important for knee stability. Okay, very carefully, right where you are, turn everything in from the hip. Again, don't crank those feet. No one has internal rotation like this, okay? So barely turn them in. And then as you go down, your knees are gonna aim towards each other. So as he squats, the knees are gonna come in a little bit, and this time he's gonna feel it on the vastus lateralis, which is the lateral quad, or the outside quad, okay? So if you're trying to develop the teardrop, these are really good exercises to do that. He inhales as he goes down, he exhales, engages his abs and then his legs. Go down, really find this guy right here, and just pump it a few times, nice and low, and push it just straight from here, right in that side of that quad. Very good. Bring it up and rest.
ICE calf series.
This next exercise is just a little spin on the calf press, and let me tell you how to get it all set up so that you can get a stretch in between every single repetition. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go ahead and put your chest on the ball, and then you're gonna take a few steps back so that you're leaning at an angle. Now it's very important that you remember your core work, okay? So we don't wanna be like this, and we don't wanna be leaning over too much, okay? Just go ahead and make the water not spill out of the bucket. You should feel your abs a little bit. It's a transverse ab contraction. Notice that Marcus is in a nice straight line all the way down. Good. Now go ahead and sink into dorsiflexion, which is where you press the heels down. Do you feel a calf stretch? And then you're gonna go ahead and raise up. And again, make sure that your core does not come engaged as you move through that range of motion. And press, and he's in parallel. One thing he does a great job at is that when he comes up on his toes, that he doesn't roll his ankles. Show him how you could roll out a little bit. Don't do that. Ah! Okay, so every time you do it, you're gonna sink and really press those heels deep down, and go ahead and pump a few. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good, and we're gonna go ahead and step out beyond shoulder width apart. We're gonna externally rotate always from the hip. Marcus, go ahead and engage those transverse abs. Did you see him pull his pelvis into the proper position? Now, he's in dorsiflexion, and then he's gonna go to plantar flexion, okay? That just means that he's pulling his toes up towards his shin, and then he's pressing down and coming up. Very good. Make sure you don't roll the ankle. In external rotation, what you wanna think about is putting all of the emphasis into the big toe, okay? Pump a few fast for us. We wanna fire those fast twitch calf fibers, which we know this fast boy has. All right, rest. And then go ahead and just swivel the hips in, and we're gonna go internally rotated. It's gonna be very hard not to roll the ankles out. Okay, so when you go up, again, press into that big toe. And here we go, up and down. When you're internally rotated, you should feel more on the outside of the calf. Do ya? Very good. Abs are tight. And just remember that internal rotation is slight and only do what your body allows you to do. And then you can fast twitch it as long as you have control over your body. Very good. And rest. That completes the calf series.
ICE side lying hip series.
All right, so we have worked the front of the leg, the calves, the back of the leg, and the inside of the leg. Now the only thing that's missing is kind of the outside of the leg, and we're gonna also be utilizing a little bit of the buns, okay? So the first thing we're gonna do is called the clam, and yes, it's gonna look very much like Jane Fonda. Sorry to make you do Jane Fonda, but it's a great exercise to start to fire up the external rotators in the hip. Okay, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna bend your knee and you're gonna tuck your toe right behind your knee. Let me get out of your way there. Make sure that your hips are stacked. Make sure that your head is in line with the rest of your body. I'm not a big fan of this, okay? Because that actually curves the spine. So you want to elongate the spine. And we're just going to drop the knee down towards the ground. And then we're going to lift it up. And then hold that first one. Everybody hold that and squeeze. I can feel it right here in the back of Marcus's buns. Is that where you guys feel it? If you don't feel it there, you may be compensating somewhere up the chain. So make sure you feel that kind of in the back of your buns, okay? Down and up, and let's just do several slow. Inhale as you descend, and exhale as you come up, squeezing. Now the big thing on this that you're gonna wanna do, that's a bad mechanic, wanna get you out of that habit, is most people wanna roll the hip open. I'm showing the wrong thing here, rolling this hip back. You wanna make sure that your pelvis stays directly on top, okay? Just like this, and then you're stirring again, going back to that femoral head or the thigh bone right up there in the socket, stirring in and out. Go ahead and do a few fast. Now when you first go to speed this up, it's probably going to want to knock you over backwards, so you got to really tighten the transverse abs as you do that. You starting to feel that now? Very good, and stop and rest. Now take the leg out to the side, and we're just going to do straight leg abduction, or taking the body away from the midline. There's a muscle here called the TFL, and that is what we are going to use to lift. So go ahead and pick that leg up, and then just go ahead and set it right back down, okay? Again, don't move in the core. The core is still, the pelvis is still, and we're just opening up using these outer muscles of the outer thigh, okay? Breath as you lift, hold it up, make sure you feel it in the right spot, right here guys, right up the side of that hip. And go ahead and pump several fast twitch for me till you really start to feel it, okay? Tighten the core, it's a blow abs, go. Now Marcus, even as conditioned as you are, you should feel that a little bit, yes?
Absolutely.
Good, hold the last one up and just do a check. Make sure that spine is tight and in correct position, transverse abs, and then right here. Okay, good. Go ahead and drop that. We're just going to repeat that on the other side. So go ahead and flip over, and then we'll start with the clam. So line your body up. One thing people try to do is they try to bend at the hips and get forward. Don't do that, okay? Make sure that if I were to draw a stripe right down here, that you'd be a nice little line on the highway, okay? Tuck that toe behind the knee and clam. Knee down and bring it up. Again, the hard part is keeping still right here. In fact, you may want to try this one with your back up against the wall, because if you start to roll the pelvis, you shut off the hip capsule, and that's what we're trying to do, is move in the hip capsule and move with the proper muscles. I've talked a lot about, working tendon to tendon, origin to insertion, and the reason that's important is because you're strengthening the joint. And as we get older, or as we increase our activities, it's just so important to have stable joints and not just, strong bellies or centers of the muscles. Good. Stabilize even more, transverse abs, and then fast twitch it, go. There we go. Good, remember not to move to fast twitch until you really have it down slow. All right, Marcus, take that leg straight out, and we're gonna do some leg lifts, straight up and down. Again, we're relaxed through here, relaxed in the head. It's an inhale, exhale, transverse abs, and then the leg. Blow abs, go. That's what we want every single rep. Again, this little outer thigh muscle here. Squeeze and lift. Good. Remember too, it's a contraction and then a resist, 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 okay? Don't lift it and then smack it down, okay? Go ahead and do a few fast twitch of those until you really start to feel him. Notice too, he's not moving in here. It's his transverse abs that are holding him stable. He's got that inner core on, and he's really forcing just this one little muscle to contract there. You feel that? Good, hold the last one. Tell him where you feel it.
TFL all the way up to my hip capsule.
All the way up into the hip capsule to stabilize. Excellent, that's exactly what I want you guys to feel, so go ahead and drop and rest.
Congratulations! You've just completed ICE Foundations. For more information about other ICE products, visit us on the web at innercoreexercise.com.